So we're going to go ahead and just get started. If there's somebody out there who should be on this meeting and they're unable to either access the GoToMeeting or the Skype link, just if they could send the message to Julian, because I'll be doing the bulk of the talking. Julian's going to be kind of moderating as we go forward. We'll make sure that that person is added. Okay, so this will be sort of a refresher course or an introduction to C.Request for a lot of the folks who are new or existing users. I think the way that we're going to do this is we're going to hold questions until we end a particular section. I think what works best for me is that if I'm able to kind of get through the things that the topics that I think are important, given what we're discussing, given the subject that we're discussing. I think a lot of questions will naturally kind of get answered, and if there's something that you need clarification on, please, it has to be kind of like I need to know this right now. Send that question to Julian, and he'll kind of chime at me, and then we can make sure that topic is addressed. Okay. So the first thing that we're taking a look at right now, this is your home screen for C.Request, and what we've got here are we've got 5 tabs actually, sorry. Your Just In tab is going to have any new documents that are assigned to you. For requisitioners, this isn't going to be particularly common. Your hot list, which is going to be your repository of all your bookmarked requisitions. Your recently accessed, these are going to be any document, any requisition that you've accessed within the last 30 days. And then your worksheet, which is going to have everything that you've worked on for the entirety of your account's existence. So if you've been here for 10 years, you'll see all 10 years of documents, of related documents that you've worked on, right? And each search field here allows you the flexibility to kind of search for certain things. Maybe I'm looking for something with a procurement status that has been unsubmitted, or something that's fully awarded or partially awarded. Anything here. Let's say I'm looking for unsubmitted requisitions. I'm just going to fill out this drop down, and then I click search. And this will show me everything in my worksheet that has an unsubmitted status. Okay, so let's get right down to the meat and potatoes. All right. As a requisitioner, right, pretty much your only function, or one of the main functions that you're going to have, is to create new requisitions. And I realize that there are some small bureau users on this call. So if something looks a little bit different in terms of the naming conventions of your requisition, just realize that we're kind of gearing this towards the OS side, but really the process is essentially the same, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So if I'm a new requisitioner and I'm ready to create my requisition, I'm going to look at the left side of my screen where it says main menu, and then under create, you most likely will not have all these different options because this is just the test environment, but you're going to look for something that says requisition. So I'm under create, and I'm going to go to requisition. From here, I'm going to be taken to the requisition pin and name screen. And for Office of the Secretary program offices, you're going to see this document number with several different things, several different segments that you have to choose from. This AA doesn't change. This is going to be the customer. This is going to be the segment, the office segment. So where you have this triple Z, you can choose from like OAM or OCR, OFM, etc., etc. So if I'm going to be creating an OAM requisition, this is the selection that I'm going to use. This next segment for OS is going to be like the type of money or type of funding. So this is like working capital funds. This next segment, D, you have the options of an O or a D, and that's to denote whether this is an obligation or a de-obligation. And we'll talk about de-obligations either today if we have time or in a separate training. But for right now, we're gonna be requesting money, or we're gonna be trying to buy something for a positive dollar obligation. So we're gonna leave that here. Now, this next segment is the fiscal year. Right now it's defaulted to 20 because that's the year we're in. I believe in the past we've allowed prior fiscal year numbers to be used. I understand, I understand that the purpose behind that was to create requisitions for de-obligations or realignments that pertain to a prior fiscal year. But I'm not sure of the process currently. So for right now, we're going to just leave this at 20. The last segment is going to be a 5-character counter, which is a system-generated number that will automatically tick based on how many requisitions there are. And then this document name is going to be defaulted to whatever that you put in here. Whatever the document number is going to be defaulted to the document name. But if I wanted to change this, I could do test requisition. Just something that gives you the ability to label your requisition to easily find it. Let's say new requisition for test. And I'm going to click save. You'll automatically be brought to this administration screen. Okay. From here, every screen in C-Suite has a similar type of setup. There's always going to be different tabs. You might only have one, you might have 5, but each tab has different information that you're required to fill out. And you know that information is required because it's got an asterisk next to it. So for example, right now the delivery date is blank. If I tried to proceed with this requisition without filling in that delivery date, the system would stop you because this is declared as a required field. It's mandatory. From here, any field that does not have a blank, or I'm sorry, that does not have an asterisk is a free-form text field. For example, this one I could type in like myself, or I could use, if that field has a search, has a magnifying glass, I could click that and use to search for a certain person. And I click that, which is the select button, and right there, that shows up. And the same thing is true for any of these magnifying glasses. Depending on what kind of field it is, will determine what kind of search menu shows up. For example, under this FAPS number, if you know the number, you can put something in. But if you don't know the number, you can always press search. And you can fill it out here. You can either copy this and type it in, or click select. And there you go. It'll fill it out. So your UNSPSC code. This is a subject where, or this is a field where a lot of requisitioners end up asking the acquisition shop for advice on what the UNSPSC code is. But really, a lot of the information in this requisition is stuff that you're giving to enterprise services. So we really don't know. This is, or really, it's up to you to determine what it is. So again, so if you have some questions about, what kind of, what code you're supposed to be using, Usually I would defer back to, your budget person, or, your bona fide need certifier, or your supervisor. That type of information is usually fed to us, not the other way around. And the purpose right now is to training requisition for C.Request. Okay, so down here below, we've got two fields. We've got a contract number field and a delivery order number field. So if you're submitting a requisition for a contract to do, let's say, like a modification, I would suggest that you enter in the contract number or the delivery order number. So if you know what that is, I would make sure to put that down. Otherwise, the contract specialist or whoever it's going to be assigned to has no idea what you're trying to ask for. Okay. So and the reason why these aren't mandatory is because obviously if you're creating a requisition for a new contract, or a new PPA or a new IDIQ, something like that, we obviously don't have an existing contract number. But if you do know what it is, then please make sure that you add something to that. Mirta, so for questions, I'm going to ask the group after I finished a topic if anybody has questions, and at that point we'll take them. But obviously we're running a little behind, and we've got we've got a lot to get through. So I'll raise that point when we kind of get to it. Okay. So the next tab, here's where it gets a little. This is super important. There was an OEM policy that went around, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, that changed the way that we need to set up requisitions for internal review. So you are required to send your requisitions for review and approval to at a minimum 2 people. 1, your bona fide need certifier, and 2, your fund certifier. So your fund certifying officer is usually someone from the OS side, would be OFM. And I think we have a group of, I think Sharon can kind of talk a little bit more about this. But there's a group of fund certifying officers that are assigned to each program office and office of the secretary. And for the small bureau users, I believe you all have your own budget folks to work with. So for right now, I'm going to be selecting BFNC 1 and FCO 1. Now, the important thing here is to make sure that this and this are exactly correct, because when it comes time to actually review and approve something and then commit the requisition, commit the money, if these fields aren't matching, then we're going to see we're going to have some errors. So what I would actually recommend that you do is, instead of manually typing something in, I would use the search function. And from here, let's go to all offices, and let's look for a specific authority type. This should say bona fide need certifier. But here they are. Okay. So this is going to be your list of all BFNCs or fund certifying officers, and from here you can select these people. But I'm going to be looking for a bona fide need certifier, and there it is. So if I had gone with the way that I had originally typed it, the system would not have allowed me to go forward with the commitment and the submission of this requisition, because I was off by 1 space, which is a little tough sometimes. But it's just the way that the system works. There's not really a whole lot that we can do about it right now. So in general, I would just make sure that you're using the search function here to identify your BFNCs and select your BFNCs, and the same goes for your FCOs. Does anybody have questions about that or anything that I've said so far?
Hi,
Yes.
Do you have like a common use list, or does that have to be correct, or because I always had a hard time picking the right code for people.
Getting a lot of feedback here, Divya. Can you mute? Um,
So if my question is regarding UNSPC code. Does that have to be correct? Because I always have a hard time picking the right code.
okay, so the UNSPS. Divya, can you mute your mic? Thank you, or your phone. So the UNSPSC code is from a website. I don't have a commonly used list. I think if anybody would have that, you might want to ask Tom Cochran. But if you enter in something, can I'm getting a lot of feedback. Can we just make sure that the that your mics are muted or your phone is on mute?
My phone is mute. I think someone else's phone is. I can hear the echo too.
Okay. Um, I would just make sure that I, I I would still kind of I would ask Tom Cochran at OAM. I think he's got a pretty big list. I don't really have a whole lot of answers for you with that one because again, that's not something that we provide. That's something that you guys give us. So I know it's a little bit vague, and that field that code in particular is something that we haven't been or that may or may not be continued to be used at commerce or within the government. So I'm sorry I don't have a good answer for you. I would check with Tom Cochran. Send us what you think is the best code to use, and if it needs to get changed, you can always email your CO or your CS and just ask them, hey, this is a better code that we found.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. The next treasury account symbol I'm going to be skipping. I'm just going to fill this in real quick. We are actually going to be discontinuing the use of that code going down the line. So it's not super important that you have something in there right now. This actually doesn't get translated into anything. I think this is the commonly used code. Agency identifier is 13 for OS. Because 1301 is our contracting office ID, 1300 being Department of Commerce. So again, if you have more questions about that code, feel free to ask us later on. And your addresses, okay. This is where you're going to be, requesting like where this is going to, where your requisition is going to, or who it's going for, or who it's going to, what office, who's funding it, et cetera, or who the contracting office is. So a lot of this stuff gets filled out like kind of automatically, and you can change that in your profile. If we have time, I'll go back to that. But for right now, looks like we're purchasing for OPOG, and our contracting office ID is SSD1, which is Enterprise Services. And again, if you're unsure of where it needs to go to, we have this search bar, and you can always select something if you don't know the code exactly. And supplemental address information, say room 16. Just making that up. Okay. So now let's talk about save, apply, reset, and cancel. Whenever you have an option to edit a field or make changes to something in C-Suite, you're generally going to see these buttons. Apply keeps you on that same page. Save will take you to the next page, and reset will obviously reset everything that you've done. But if you're kind of like working on something, just make sure that if you're working on something and you want to stay on the same page and you maybe have to go away for a second, hit apply. This keeps me where I am. But if I click save, you're going to see that you're going to see my screen change to something else. Okay, so right now I'm at the requisition summary screen, and from here, this is going to be exactly what it is, a summary of everything that the requisition has so far. So from here, there's each section. There are sections in the middle of the screen that kind of summarize all the information that you've input into your requisition. So here there's some information that I've input into my administration screen. It's going to show up here. My account summary is going to be where your line items or your cost and your accounting codes. That information is going to show up here. Your line items, like how many line items, like the total cost, etc., etc. So once you've entered in certain things within C-Suite, I would always check the summary screen just to make sure that things are, showing up as they should be. Okay. So the first area that I'm going to go to is the accounting section, but I'm going to access this from the summary screen. And I'm going to do this because there's a couple different ways to add accounting codes into your requisition, or really there's two, but it's a little confusing how the system has it set up. So I want to demonstrate this to you guys now, just so you can see what the difference is, okay? So if I'm at the requisition summary screen and I go into accounting here, this is what I call accounting defaults, because this is the section where if I want to create one accounting code for all of my line items to use, I would do it here. But if I have a line item that has 50 different accounting codes, and then I have another line item that has another 50 accounting codes that are different, I wouldn't do it from here. I would actually go into the line item. Okay, so just keep that in your back pocket for right now. I'm going to go ahead and create an accounting code really quick, and I'm just going to kind of make this up. Okay, and notice that a lot of these have a ton of extra zeros, and that's because the way that the NIST financial interface kind of accepts these transactions, it all needs to be one long string. So all the numbers that you see here are the length of each segment. So your organization code needs to have 16 characters, even though you only identify the the different organization codes maybe by the first four. Same thing with your object class code. Maybe it's the only first four, but you need to make sure that you have 8 total characters, 16 total characters, etc., etc. So I've entered in all these accounting code segments. I'm going to leave this default box checked because I want this to be the default accounting code that's used on all CLINs. And then I'm going to make the default percent 100. And I'm going to click Save. That takes me out to the previous screen. Here you can see that it is marked as the default. The default percentage is 100, and there are no line items that are currently using this accounting code. And we're going to see that change in a second. Okay, so I went back to the requisition summary screen. I'm going to go into line items. I'm going to create 2 line items very quickly. And I'm just going to do one for $100. Oops, test. And then I'm going to create a second one, 2 for $50. So now I have 2 accounting codes, okay? I'm going to go back into CLIN 1, and then I'm going to navigate here to accounting. This accounting is specific to this line item. So you'll see that there's an accounting code that's pre-populated within this line item, correct? That accounting code is from the accounting default, all right? So the accounting code that I put in from the summary screen is going to show up here. However, And we can actually confirm, okay, we've got 2 line items using this accounting code. However, if I do need to make a change to that accounting code, let's say, oops, I got this project code wrong. If I go back into the account summary screen, from the summary screen, if I go back into the default accounting code where I originally entered in that accounting code, and I try to make an edit to it, let's say this is, I don't know, 07030. You'll see then that this accounting code no longer has any line items associated with it. Because once you create a line item using a default accounting code, that line item will always have that default accounting code. Do you see how it's using this old one? It didn't get retroactively changed. I don't know if that was the intent on the system from that. I don't know if that was the original intent that Kaki had when they were designing the system, but ultimately that's just how the system works. So it's a good function to use, but only if you understand exactly how it's going to interact with your line items. If you had one accounting code or 2 accounting codes on your requisition, and each line item that you used, or each line item that you're going to create is going to use those 2 accounting codes, it's probably a good idea to create them from the summary screen. If you have many line items that use different accounting codes, they're not all using the same one, I probably wouldn't do that. Because then you're going to go in here, you're going to create your default accounting code, you're going to go back to your line items, you're going to create another line item, and it's going to be using an accounting code that maybe isn't the correct one for that particular line item. So I'm going to create a new CLIN. And if I go into accounting, it's going to be using this accounting code. But let's say I don't want to use that one. So I'm actually going to delete this accounting code. I'm going to create a new one. So that's another way that I would do it. And you can actually see that I left one segment out, or one character out. Boom, right there. So I just created a new CLIN, and I used an entirely different accounting code than what was being used as the default accounting code. All right. So those are 2 ways that you can kind of go about creating accounting codes and creating line items. Does that make sense so far? Does anybody have questions about that? We're going to dig into line items in a little bit.
I have a question. I mean, so far it's good. This is Vivian again. So I used to do the 135 official part, and I have seen if I had to split the PR between 3 more than 2 accounting codes. How do you do that? Because sometimes when I try to do this commit the funds, I get an error message because either the quantity allocation is not right or the cost allocation is not right. Is there a way you can share an example using different percentages? How to break down
Yes.
cost between 3? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Yes, I'll give you an example of that. And Anna, yes, you can uncheck I'll give you an example of that in a second. And Anna, to answer your question, you can uncheck the accounting defaults, which is a way for you to say, I have a default accounting code, but I don't want to use it as my default anymore. And this way, when I create a new line item, it won't have that accounting code on there anymore. So I know that was rather quick, but when you do create a default accounting code, you can uncheck the default box. So to answer Divya's question, all right, I just created a new CLIN. I'm gonna go. Let's increase the values here just so we have a little bit more of a real world example. Let's go 20. Okay, so I'm gonna hit apply, and then I'm gonna go to accounting. I'm gonna create 2 accounting codes, and these will just be kind of dummy accounting codes. Let's do 0% for right now until I create this second one. Okay, so now you see that I've got 2 accounting codes. Right now, I set the allocation to percent, and I marked percent as 0. So whenever I do that, this accounting code will always be at 0%. But let's say I want it to be 50%. So as soon as I do that, you're going to see this auto adjust, and it's going to adjust the cost and the quantity. When I uncheck the default box, will that automatically remove the accounting string from the CLINs it's applied to? No, it will not. So the CLINs that you created with that default accounting will always have those accounting codes until you actually change it within the line item. Okay. Good question. So I'm back at this accounting code. I just made my allocation by percent, and I made percent 50. I'm going to click save. Now you're going to see that we've got 50% of the line item total on one accounting code, and we've got 0 on here. Now, I could make this 50%, or I could say, I'm going to give this one a specific cost, and I'm going to do 25, and I'm going to make this one 2. So it auto adjusts to, because I set the allocation to cost, now the percentage is going to adjust to whatever the cost is. Okay, and I would never ever use quantity, so just forget about using that one. It's either percent or cost. So here we have one accounting code that's got $100 and 5 quantity, and you've got another accounting code that has $25 and a quantity of 2. And up here you can see on the accounting totals, we've got a quantity of 7, a percentage of 62, and a total cost of $125. Now, if you were to try to send this over to enterprise services, the system would not allow you to do that. You always have to send fully funded line items. And then from our side, from the award administration side, the contract specialist or officer is going to then say, okay, well, actually, this is just maybe this is like a 6-month thing where we only have funding for 3 months. That's what they sent us. So, then we'll increase the ceiling of the line item, but the funding amount stays at $125. So let's actually take a look at that. So we're in CLIN 4. CLIN 4, we said we want to have a quantity of 10, and then each quantity is going to be $20. But right now I haven't completely matched that $200 amount. Nor have I matched that 10 quantity. So I still need to fully fund this. So I'm going to create another accounting code. Do this a little quick. And I'm missing $75, so I'm going to put in 75 here, and I've got to add 3 quantity here, and it auto adjusts accordingly. So there, I've got and this is wrong, obviously, but from here you can see that I've got a cost of $200, which matches the line item total. We are at 100% now, and we've got a total quantity of 10. So across all three of your accounting codes, your costs need to add up to the line item cost, and your accounting code cost needs to add up to your line item quantity. I'm sorry, your accounting code quantity needs to add up to your line item quantity, which is why we have a 10 up here, and we see that 5 plus 2 plus 3 equals 10. So this one's good to go, except for this thing. So Divya, did that make sense? Those are just some ways that you can go about kind of making those adjustments. What we shouldn't see is, let me just demonstrate this real quick. What we should not see is like this. So I made one of my accounting codes 100%. That means that you're saying this entire accounting code is going to have 100% of the cost and the quantity associated with it. Now look at how jacked up the numbers are. Because remember, your accounting code, cost and quantities have to add up to equal whatever you set the line item cost and quantity to. So because the total line item cost is $200, 100% of that is going to be $200. But now when I add up everything, I now have $375 instead of the amount of money that I had previously. So I'm going to make a change. Go to costs, make this $25. I'll make this 2 quantity. Press save. Now everything's back into alignment. Okay. Let's talk about option years. I'm going to go into the same line item, and I'm going to go into the option selection. The default selection is blank. You have two other options. You have the base period, and you have an option period. Now, this is something that I think gets kind of confused. It's a little confusing the way that the system sets it up, because, and it's really a result of the financial interface that Commerce has. As soon as you mark a line item as an option period, whenever you send it to the finance system, or whenever your FCO presses commit, the finance system will automatically zero out any money that you have on here. So if I make this an option period, you're going to see that we have an option period here. It may look like you have all that money associated with it, but when you send it over, none of that funding is going to come over. So this $200 line item, if you mark it as an option period, is going to be completely blanked out. It's going to be zeroed out. Okay? So if you're sending over a requisition to fund an exercise, like requesting to fund and exercise an option period CLIN that's already on the award, you should not mark this as an option period. I would recommend that you either leave it blank or that you make it a base period. Okay, because that option CLIN already exists on that award. So there's no reason to make it an option period again, because the system already knows, okay, CLIN 4 came from the PR, it has $200, and if it's going to be associated with an existing award that has a CLIN 4, the system knows to match those two line items together because you've sent it over as CLIN 4. That's what my recommendation would be. Either leave it as a base, either make it a base period or just leave it blank.
Tim, I have a quick question.
Yes.
What if in a scenario where you're actually putting a new base contract for base plus 4 option years, and obviously you were going to fully fund the base year, but can we then add option CLINs with zero funding?
Yes, you can.
So that we can have the entire contract structure set up correctly at the beginning?
Yes, you can absolutely do that. Just realize that those account or um, that the option year CLINs are not going to have any funding. And if you're sending over
Right.
an option year CLIN, you should actually probably just leave this at $0, and then regardless of whether or not you know that these are going to be the accounting codes that you're going to use in those out years, I would actually remove them. Comprizon Suite has a little bit of a glitch or a hiccup when it's time to exercise and fund a new option year CLIN. We have a lot of trouble trying to make adjustments to an option year CLIN if they're sent over with accounting codes on them. So if you're going to create something as an option CLIN, I would make sure to delete this. And then you can make sure to do this option period selection.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And let's say, yes, was there another question?
Yes, I'm sorry, I may have missed this, but so as long as they put the proper period of time, then they don't need to choose the option, right, year, because they don't automatically make the connection.
If you're sending over a PR to mod a contract, you don't need you don't need an option period. You don't need to select the period of performance. So like if you're trying, like let's say I have CLIN 4 here, right? And I want to add money to CLIN 4. I want to like exercise and fund CLIN 4 on the award. Make sure that you have CLIN 4 on your PR. That way the system knows that, okay, the PR has CLIN 4, the award has CLIN 4, we're going to match it together, and we're going to apply that funding that you sent on the PR to that option year CLIN. Okay, so it's based on the line item number, not the period of performance.
I have a question.
Yes.
We do mostly furniture procurements. Is there a scenario where you leave that field blank and then just put your period of performance in?
Which field blank?
Um, yeah. If you go to options, can you leave that blank and just have a period of performance?
No, you can't.
Because, like, when we do procurements for furniture, it's not definitely not an option period, and it's not a base contract. But, ES wants to know the, period of performance, so we would pick base period.
You would have to select base period. Because if I did this, it's going to ask me to select an option designation. The system won't let you continue. So you have to either select base period or option period.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
This is Anna. I have a question for you as well.
Yeah.
So you said that, let's say for an example, I'm starting a new contract. I'm going to have a base plus 4.
Okay.
You said I can set that up in there, and I can put 4 CLINs in there, leave them all blank, don't put financial, accounting, nothing. So my base year's up. Now it's time to do my first option year. I can now go back into this requisition, hit CLIN 1, because that's going to be the first option year, and I can add all of that information in, the amount, the date, the accounting stream, so on and so forth, and it'll all match up, correct?
So wait. So you're saying that you've created a PR with base plus 4 options, and then you send it to the acquisition shop, and then they create an award against it, and then
Right.
okay. So no, that's not what I was saying. So you would have to create a mod. You would have to create another PR to fund and exercise all of that, all the other line items.
Okay.
So let me just clarify. If I have a PR with base plus 4 options, you can have no funding on it if you want, but then the acquisition shop is gonna gonna issue an award um, with no money on it. They can, which I guess does happen. But then when you need to fund it again, like let's say you need to fund the base period, you can't just go back into the same requisition. You have to create a new one then. So if you want to fund something, you should fund it. But if you don't have the money right now, and you just want to get the award, issued or whatever, you can create base plus 4, or base plus whatever, or just base. Send it over, like leave it $0. Send it over to the acquisition shop. They can create the award or do whatever with it. And then if you need to fund it, you have to create a new PR, and they would have to do a modification to that award using that PR, using that new PR to apply the funding onto that base or whatever option year. Does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense, yes. But earlier when you said, do you see CLIN 4 right there, and it says option period, you said you could leave it with no funding, no quantity, no nothing. So I thought we were able to go back in there when option 4 period came up.
No, that's the
string in it and fund it.
Yeah, but that would have to be a new. You can do that. It just has to be a new PR. You can't do that on the same PR that you use. I think maybe that's what I thought you were asking.
Okay. Yep, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So unless there's any more questions with line items, I think they're super important. So, but I think we've covered a lot. If there's no other questions with that, I'd like to get into adding some support documents. Okay. So I'm at the requisition summary screen. On the left side of your screen, I'm going to go down to where it says procurement and click support documents. And this is where you're going to add, if you're doing like an IT buy, you have that big 5 and your IT checklist, all the requirements that the acquisition shop requests from you, your IGCE, your SOW, whatever other kind of documents that you need to put within your requisition. This is where you're going to do that. So from support document management, I'm going to click create. Now, this title that I'm about to give it is something specific only to C-suite, and I'm going to show you why that makes a difference going forward. Now, you can choose to fill in all this other stuff. I don't feel like it's necessary to, and the system also doesn't feel like it's necessary to. If you scroll down, this is where you're going to choose to upload. You can choose to upload an existing file. You can create a new file using a template, enter a hard copy location. Let's say if it's like on a share drive location somewhere. But most commonly, folks prefer to upload an existing document. So I'm going to click choose file. And it will automatically default me to this screen right here. This is just going to be your pop-up window. You can choose whatever document that you want from here. So I'm going to upload whatever document that was, and I'm going to hit apply. Support document successfully added. So now I'm going to go back to the support document management screen. And from here, you can see that it's on that it's been added to this requisition. So I'm going to click this document, and boom, here. So let's say that, okay, maybe this was your IGCE, but you uploaded the wrong file. You can actually upload a different file, click save, and then it will reflect a different file. So now it shows a different file name. But let's say I created something else, but I uploaded the same file. even though these two document titles are different, the file name, the actual digital file that you uploaded, is the same. They're labeled the same thing, which is a problem. So C-Suite will not allow you to continue if there are duplicate support documents. So one of these has to change or be deleted. All right, so just make sure that whenever, if you do have that kind of issue that appears, just make sure that you're checking to see if you do have a duplicate file name. Okay. So the next step, how am I doing on time? Okay. The next step for requisitioners, we're going to, now that we've uploaded a support document, we've created our line items, we set our costs, etc., etc. We're all good on that. We're going to then go to manage reviewers/approvers so that we can actually send our requisition for review and approval to the bona fide needs certifier and the fund certifying officer. So I'm going to go back to the summary screen. I'm going to scroll down to where it says actions and manage reviewers/approvers. So I'm going to click that. From here, it says that there are no records found, which means that we haven't added any reviewers and approvers to this particular requisition. So I'm going to click Add User. Reviewer name, or this is going to be your code. If you don't know that reviewer code, I would again suggest that you click this magnifying glass and search for whoever it is that you are looking for. Either by that way, or you can use your authority type, like your fund certifying officer, etc., etc. Okay, so for this reviewer, I've selected BFNC1. The receiving order is going to be defaulted to 10, but you can make this like 1 if you would like. And I'm going to click Save. Okay, so now we see that we have one reviewer and approver, and right now there's a blank status, which means that nothing is happening. This review has not been sent out to them, so it's not going to be in their inbox to review. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to be adding another reviewer. And I'm going to make this guy level 2. Okay, so if you'll notice something, your route orders will always default to 10 or 20, but in this case I made them 1 and 2. The person with the person or the team rather with the lowest route order will always go first, will always have priority. So if you're adding 5 or 6 people and you know that it needs to go to Joe Smith first before Mike Green, then you want to make sure that Joe Smith has the lowest number on this route order. And when it's time to release it for review, you want to make sure that you click the first person or the lowest route that has a blank status and then click release. I don't need to click release on both of these because the way that route orders work it's kind of like dominoes. Once you tip one over and they're good to go, it kind of flows on through the next the next one, the next one, the next one. So it just kind of it will go on and on and on until there's no more reviewers left. So I'm going to click release. And now we see that we have a status of review pending by BFNC1. Now, let's say that we needed to make some edits, before we send it to this person. We needed to change like a line item. We needed to make this, we needed to do something, some sort of change here. It could be adding a support document, whatever. I would then mark this particular route and then click recall. and then I click save. Now the system, if you see, automatically bumped up the next two, or the next route, which was FCO1, but it also created a duplicate route to BFNC1. Because what it's doing is that it's assuming that you recalled this from that person with the intent to send it to them again. So if I've recalled somebody, the system will always make another route to that same person with the next highest available priority. And it'll bump down this person. Do we see that we had 1, and then it went to 11, and then 12? Before it was just 1 and 2. So now if I need to send this to BFNC1, I wouldn't I wouldn't mark route order 1, I would mark route order 11. Because you can only perform actions on route orders that have a blank status. So if I try to delete route order 1, it says only reviewers that have not received the action status column is blank may be deleted. So because this status column is not blank, I can't do anything with it. It's done. The domino's already been knocked over. So if I want to either delete or release this one, I'm going to click on route 11 because that's the next highest available route order. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we see here that it's currently review pending by BFNC1. And I don't need to do anything with FCO1 because as soon as BFNC1, as soon as this route approves it, it's going to flow into the next person. And before we kind of address the FCO side and the BFNC side, just want to quickly go over the forms. So from the requisition summary screen, I'm just going to click forms. And from here, these are the line item print options. You can select whatever kind of options that you want, hit apply, and then hit view form. And it'll create it'll create a standard requisition form. I think this is required to send over to the acquisition shop. So that's how you do it. Any questions so far about what we just talked about, the manage reviewers and approvers or support documents? Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to log into a BFNC account. All right. So as a bona fide needs certifier or an FCO, I will typically, unless you're doing your own requisitions, I will typically not see anything in here. To access those requisitions that you have, that you're supposed to review, you need to go into your inbox. Okay. From your inbox, you can see all the requisitions that have been sent to you that are awaiting approval. Okay. Now, by default, any requisition that is in your inbox that a requisitioner has sent to you is going to be full read and write access. So if I'm going to click, if I want to, before I review and approve it, I'm going to click into it. And if I want to make any changes, I can make them just as if I own this requisition. So reviewers and approvers, if you do see something that you need to change or make an edit to, this is how the system allows you to do it. Okay, you want to go into your inbox, click on the requisition, and you have free access to make whatever changes that you want. Okay, and if I looked at the form and I determined that everything is copacetic and I've made the changes that I need to make, I'm going to go back into my inbox. I'm going to mark the specific document that needs to be approved. I'm going to go into my actions. It says review and approve. And now you have a couple different options. You can say, okay, everything was great. You can click approve. Or you can disapprove it, everything was not great, at which point the requisitioner will get a notification and they'll have to go back in, make the changes, and send it to you again. Or if you know that you're going to be on vacation or something, you can forward the responsibility to another reviewer. And same thing applies here. You can just use that search function and send it to whatever whomever that you need it to. For this one, I'm just gonna click approve. Good to go. And it requires a signature password, which is different from your login password. So if you are identified as a BFNC and an FCO, you do have a signature password, which you can always manage through through my profile. And there it is. Document successfully approved. So now, once you've approved it, it's no longer in your inbox. Okay. So that was the BFNC user. Now, as soon as the BFNC approves, that route automatically kicks down to the next person on that route list. And the next person on that route list is typically, or usually, the fund certifying officer. If your process is different, that's totally fine. I'm just kind of speaking in broad terms. So I'm going to log in now as a funds certifying officer. Okay, and same thing. I don't see anything here. I might have a couple things in here if I do my own requisitions, but I'm going to navigate to my inbox. And just like the BFNC had their own had full read and write access, the FCOs do as well. Okay, now part of the change that OAM put through based on the policy memo a couple years ago was that requisitioners cannot commit their own requisitions. It has to be done by a fund certifying officer. So that's why we're kind of going through this whole exercise. Now, when we'll kind of get back to that, but that's why I have to log in as an FCO. And I just want to show you real quick the manage reviewers and approvers screen. So we can see the statuses, right? It was recalled by this person, it was approved by this person, this route, and then now it's review pending by FCO1. At this point, I'm FCO1, I am this route, I'm actively reviewing this requisition. Before you review and before you approve your requisition for all the fund certifying officers out there, you need to make sure that you click commit. That's how the funds actually get sent to the finance system. And the finance system actually has kind of like the last say whether or not they're going to approve or reject those funds. Maybe, there's somebody just entered in like one incorrect accounting code, or maybe the funds weren't available at the time. But essentially, you have to press commit, and you have to make sure that you see everything pass through here. And if something does fail, you'll kind of see this. You'll kind of see like local validation check, something failed. At that point, you can send to me and Julian and the help desk, and we'll kind of figure that out for you. But you want to make sure that you click commit and that you're actually taken to this screen where you can press save and post. What we've seen kind of through the years is we try to normalize that process. And it's still new, so I understand that we're not all on board. What I've seen kind of a lot through the years is fund certifying officers will kind of go through. They won't actually be able to get to this screen because of some sort of validation failure, and then they'll just go and approve anyways. But they've approved something that now doesn't have a commitment, and the requisitioner can't submit that requisition to the acquisition office. So you got to make sure that when you do click commit, that this requisition report does pass all validations, and that you click save and post. Now, you're going to see something here that says commitment sent awaiting response, and it's posted on, there's a timestamp, and for this amount of money, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have to wait until this comes back as approved before you approve. It's not an instant, this is going to go through. It's not like one shot, one kill. Because there are times where these things do get rejected by the finance office, and it could be their fault, it could be our fault, it could just be a system thing. But case in point, make sure that you're waiting until you see an approved or rejected message before you take action as a fund certifying officer. Because again, once you approve or reject this requisition, you no longer have access to it, and the requisitioner needs to send it to you again for your review and approval. So I would always just err on the side of caution and wait until this comes back as approved. Sometimes, if the servers are really busy, it could take 5 to 10 minutes. If it takes any longer than that for this transaction message to change, I would probably put in a ticket. If it takes, if it comes back as rejected, you want to make sure that you click View Status. And there should be a little message. There should be a message that pops up here that you'll see message. And that's going to be like your error message from the finance system. And at that point, create a ticket with us, and we'll get it sorted out. Does that make sense so far? So I'm going to go back into my inbox. I'm going to mark this. Let's assume that this one got sent through. I actually don't think this is going to approve in the test environment, just because the interface has been acting up the last couple days. But just to kind of, for our purposes and for time, I'm going to review and approve this one. I'm going to click approve, and I'm going to enter in my signature password. All funds committed successfully. I click save. Document has been approved, and it's no longer in my inbox. So now the role of the BFNC and the FCO is over. Now we have to log back in as a requisitioner.
Okay, Tim, can I ask a question real quick before you log back in as a requisitioner?
Yes.
So let's say the finance person hit commit, and then all of a sudden they realized that there was an error. Not an error that got popped up by the system, it's just that they were re-looking at it again, and all of a sudden they realized, oops, I overlooked something. And they hit cancel commit.
Uh-huh.
Does that now require the requisitioner to redo the entire PR?
It doesn't require the requisitioner to redo the entire PR. It just resets the entire review process. So once you click cancel commit, all it does is just back out that commitment from CFS, and that allows the requisitioner to make whatever edits they need to. But they will have to send it all the way through the review and approval process again. So it's going to need to hit the BFNC and the FCO in addition to whoever else was on that list, or you can remove some people from that list. But at a bare minimum, the route will get restarted, and you'll have to send it to the BFNC and FCO. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. However, that's not what had happened in the past when we had a cancel commit. It wouldn't allow me to do any type of editing, nothing. I ended up having to submit it all over again. Errors kept coming back. And I was told that I had to put every single letter in capitalization. And then I had to submit. And then I don't know how, I can't remember how it finally went through, but I ended up having to capitalize every single thing that I put in there. It had to be in all caps, I was told. But I was never able to go back in and edit it. So once that cancel commit hit, so I ended up having to recreate the PR all over again. That's why I was asking that question.
Gotcha. There probably was something else wrong, because as long as I've been here, we've always been able to make edits to an existing PR after we've clicked cancel commit. So there may have been just I feel like I have heard that same issue pop up before. So you may have just been incredibly unlucky with like a system glitch in that regard. But the way the system should work is that if you click cancel commit, which I'll demonstrate here, if I do click cancel commit, it will back out this transaction and allow you to make edits to this requisition. And we're kind of running out of time, so I actually can't demonstrate that. But if I would say if that happens again, okay, if it happens again, just let us know, because we can take a look at it.
Okay.
All right, so now we've got a requisition, and this is a different requisition, but now we've got a requisition with an approved response, and we can see that we have everything we need to do, or everything has been done on this one. I'm going to click submit, and this is me as a requisitioner. So if you're a requisitioner and your BFNC and FCO have successfully approved it, the commitment has come back as approved, everything's good to go. The final step is for you to click submit. It's not an automatic process after the fund certifying officer clicks approve. You have to go back into the system, go into your requisition, and click submit. And everything's passed all validations. You're going to click assign PR, same number as requisition, and you're going to make sure that you click assignment pending. And then I click save. And that's it. That's how you submit a requisition into the acquisition office. Okay, so it looks like we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to open the floor up to questions. I appreciate your patience and and us trying to figure this stuff out. This is the first time that we've done a training over Skype and over GoToMeeting. We are recording this. We are recording this session for for training purposes. We'll continue to record and get better at this as we go forward. Hopefully, we can do actual in-person trainings going forward. But I'd like to open the floor up for any questions at this time.
This is April Prater-Nichols. Good evening, everybody. Question for you. I know we went over how to initiate a PR or a requisition. Are we going to talk any about modification?
Yeah, the modification process for a PR is the same. You would just create a PR for, let's go into here. You would create the PR for a mod pretty much the same way that you would create a PR for a new award. The only difference is that I would make sure that you're giving the actual award number down here. So that way the contract specialist knows that this is the award number that they need to modify. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just thinking when we're actually in the accounting stream, or let me say when we're actually in the line items, and I can only speak for me, I have several line items.
Okay.
My contract is constantly modified due to requests. So when I issue a modification, just making sure, let's say for example, I have 9 line items.
Okay.
One of those line items requires modification to add or subtract. And the other request may be to go from 9 line items to 10.
Okay. So I think that would be for modifications, obviously you're asking like different scenarios, right? What I would say is that if you have 9 line items on an award and you need to only modify one of them, then you should only have one CLIN on this PR. Does that make sense? So like if I need to modify CLIN 05, I would create a CLIN 0005, and let's say that you want to add money, you want to add $1,000 to CLIN 5 on the award. Then at that point, you're going to create a new accounting code, or create whatever accounting code that you need to put on that CLIN. So if you're using like existing money, then it has to be FY20. If you're using prior year money, prior year money is going to be kind of a different subject. Maybe we'll cover that on a at a different time. But
Okay.
yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. And I would just make sure. I think for the small bureaus, like your process may have been a little bit different. I don't know if there's anybody from the small bureau still on. It's always best to make sure that the line items that you're sending over match whatever line item that you want to be modified on the award. I know that process maybe was a little bit different at NIST, NOAA, and Census, but that's the process at OS. So that's kind of the preferred method.
Can I have a quick question? The work report that we receive weekly, is that derived from the C.Request? Is that a report that you guys pull from C.Request directly, or?
Yes, that is a PR submission from C.Request.
Is that something that we can run on our end?
I think if you do want that, we can grant you access to it.
Okay, so I'll send you a separate email.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to go through the chat here and see if there's any So, Charlene, let's see. Instead of the requisitioner canceling a submission for approval, is there a way for the BFNC and the FCO to auto-delegate an alternate in the event? Yes. Good question. So, let's say that I'm an FCO and I need to go on leave. I'm going to go into my profile. And right down here, under Preferences, you can click Forward Items Routed to My Inbox. If I check that, you can forward it to somebody else. So that's a good way. That's a good way for if you know that you're going to be on leave, that's how you would kind of achieve that. I'm going to send it to Julian. So anytime somebody releases a requisition or a document for review and approval, if I have this box checked, it's always going to go to whoever I designate here. Awesome. Good question.
So, Tim, I have a question to follow up on that. So I've done that before, and I assumed that once it's forwarded to that person, that if they review it and approve it, I wouldn't see it in my inbox. But that's not the case, right? I've seen the one time that I did it, I saw that I had a copy for my review. So in that case, what do we do? Do we do the full review and approval, or how does that normally work?
I believe it should work that way, like the first way that we described. I think if it doesn't work that way, then we're going to have to kind of take a look at that with Khaki. If not, if that keeps happening, then you could go into your inbox. You can mark whichever document you need review and approved, and then click forward responsibility and just send it to that reviewer. Or the requisitioner, or maybe you can communicate to the requisitioner, hey, take me off of the route list and send it to this person. But if you give me an example of one or two, we can take a look at it offline, because that's definitely, I don't think that that's supposed to happen.
No, that happened a while ago. I don't have an example. But
okay.
I do remember that the person whom I forwarded it to approved it, but I still had it in my inbox
Gotcha.
for my approval.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
But if it happens again, I'll let you know.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay.